Hey y'all, so this set of notes is over an introduction to the phylum Chordata. We're just going to go over some characteristics and a couple different organisms within the phylum Chordata that don't fit into the other groups that we're going to study in this phylum. So first up, some characteristics that all Chordata are going to share is that they have bilateral symmetry. At some stage in their life, they're going to have a notochord, pharyngeal slits or pouches, a dorsal tubular nerve cord, and a postanal tail. They're either going to have an endostyle or thyroid gland. They'll have a complete digestive tract, and they'll have ventral contractile blood vessel, aka a heart. So the notochord is a supportive dorsal cord that runs through the body cavity to the tail. It allows for lateral movement, which is side-to-side movement. And in adult vertebrates, it's going to be either cartilage or bone will replace the notochord. So you can see on this diagram here, the red line here is the notochord. So think of like a backbone. The second thing is the pharyngeal slits or pouches. These are going to be openings between the digestive tract and the outside. Some animals won't have these open outwards, and that's when they're called pouches instead of slits. Ancestral, these will have been used for feeding, and some animals still use them for feeding. But if their pharyngeal slits or gills will be used for gas exchange, and in terrestrial vertebrates, these are mainly going to be found in the embryonic stage, which is why the diagram I'm showing you is of an embryo. For the dorsal nerve cord, this is going to run dorsal to the notochord. It's going to expand anterior as the brain, and it's going to be responsible for all the complex systems of senses, perception, integration, and motor response. So a lot of the things that the brain does is what this is going to do, and that's here in blue. And then the last thing is the postanal tail. It's going to extend posterior beyond the anal opening, and the notochord or vertebral column will support the tail. So here you can see that right here in this animal, right? And again, some of these are only going to be found in the embryo stage. So like we don't have a tail, but in the embryo stage, right? So the first subphylum we're going to go over is Chordata. This includes tunicates or sea squirts. They're going to be sessile as adults. They could be solitary animals or live in colonies. And a lot of them will be considered plankton as adults. For the sessile tunicates, they're going to attach to a solid substrate. They're going to be, their unattached end will have two openings. The oral opening, which will be opposite of the attached end, and it'll take in water and serve as the mouth of the animal. Then they'll have an atrial siphon, which lets water out of the animal. So it just goes in one opening and out the other. And they have like a U-shaped body. Their body wall has a connective tissue-like covering to it, and it often looks like it's covered in gel, but it's actually quite tough to feel. And then they're going to have root-like stolons, which may connect to the substrate or connect them to each other. Like think of tree roots, and then they're just kind of all interlocking with each other, so they're connected as a colony. For their muscles, they're going to have longitudinal and circular muscles to help change their body shape, and they're going to work against the elastic tunic and the hydrostatic skeleton to help them contract and flow. So you can kind of see that here in their body, in this almost like x-ray. Their nervous system is going to be mostly in the body wall. It's called a plexus, and they're going to have a single ganglion between the openings, and then they're going to have mechanoreceptors and chemoreceptors all over their body, but more of these are going to be found near the mouth. And mechanical receptors are going to be able to sense like pressure changes and if they're being touched. And then chemoreceptors are going to sense changes in the water, like if there was more salt or some foreign chemical coming in, things like that, anything chemical related. They're going to have tentacles around the oral opening to help keep large things out of their mouth. Then their pharyngeal slits are being called stigmas, which have cilia around them that bring water into the pharynx. So it's going to go through the pharynx, into the stigma, through the atrium, and then out the atrial siphon. So it's going to just make that U shape through the body. So come in one way and then exit out the other. For digestion, it will continue from the pharynx along a mucus tract created by the endostyle. The digestion will occur in the stomach, and absorption occurs inside the intestines, and then it'll exit out the anus. For gas exchange, it'll occur in the pharynx as water circulates through it. And then for circulation, the heart will be found near the base of the pharynx, and one vessel will go towards the endostyle, and one will go towards the digestive organs and the gonads. For excretion, the ammonia will fuse into the water, and they'll have pyloric glands that may have excretory functions, but scientists have not studied those in depth yet. For development, it'll start as they start as a free-swimming larval, and they do not eat during this stage. They'll attach to a substrate, where then their outer epidermis will shrink. They'll bring their notochord and tail inside their body, and their body basically makes a 180-degree turn to make their digestive tract a U shape as they're attaching themselves to a substrate. All right, the next subphylum is Cephalo Chordata. This includes lancelets, and they'll also demonstrate all 4 chordae characteristics. There's 2 genera during this, or 2 different genuses. There's about 45 species known right now, and they're found all over the world. Their body plan looks pretty much like a tadpole. They're small. They're generally only a few inches inside. In size. They're laterally flattened, but they're pretty weak swimmers, and they generally are going to burrow into the sand. They are filter feeders, and they live with their anterior end exposed. Their notochord is going to run from the tail to the head. Most of their notochord cells are going to be muscle cells, and when they contract, they become more rigid, and when they relax, they become more flexible. For swimming, the muscles on the side of the notochord will cause undulations, or they'll look like they're wiggling. The longitudinal ventrolateral folds will help stabilize them, and the dorsal and caudal or tail fins will help aid them in swimming as well. They have an anterior oral hood that projects cirri, which are finger-like feeding tentacles, and the posterior of the oral hood has the mouth that leads to the pharynx with many pharyngeal slits supported by gill bars. So you can see the cirri right here, and then it's going to go into the body here and travel through there. For eating, they are filter feeders. They're going to live buried in the sand. Large particles will build up on them, and then they'll shake them off with cirri. The cirri, these little finger-like projections on here. So water will carry in small food particles. They'll stick to the endostyle, which has like a mucus layer on it, and then the digestion will actually occur both outside the cells and inside the cells. For other things about them, they don't have a true heart. They do have vessels that will contract to move blood around, which they do have amoeboid cells in their blood. They have excretory tubules that work with the blood vessels in the cloam. And then the cloam is reduced and limited to small canals. And that is it for this set of notes.